Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone. Happy April, nice sunny April outside. Today, we're going to talk about maintaining a zero inbox in Outlook. Now, most of you know we've had email around the university for quite a few years, and a lot has changed since we started getting email or started using email. We have a lot more options of what can be done to collaborate with one another. But even through all of that, over the last at least 25 years since we've been having a consolidated email at the university, we are still using it the same way, right? Nothing has changed the way we use it. So we might think about how we might better utilize email so it doesn't take up so much of our time. So let me start with a PowerPoint here. Let me share my screen with you. You should see my screen. On here, it talks about there was an article uh, put out by J.D. Meyer, and he was a Microsoft employee, and he had a zero inbox for 25 years, and he was able to keep his job, and it wasn't like he had a rule set up, let's say, all incoming email just go to the trash. It was the way that he thought about email years ago, and he still uses it till today the same way. And I've been doing this, taking his recommendation since January, the first of this year, and it's really freed me up to focus on things that I'm working on. I don't get distracted by emails coming in, so we'll talk about that. So um, this isn't really a recipe or prescription for everyone, but I would think it would be for the majority of us because unless you are at like a help desk where you have to monitor emails or maybe just depending on your work, if you do have to stay on top of all emails, even like from outside sources that use email. But the question that I placed here is how many of us have fire alarm messages sent to us by email? Because we do have other ways now that we get messages, right? Phone calls, for us who use Teams and chat. Our University of Missouri does have a campus alert system if it is something really urgent. But how many of us still receive emails that are urgent and need an immediate response? And so if you kind of think about that, but if you're not in an environment that you need to respond immediately to an email, then hopefully we'll get you thinking about it in a different manner. So again, it's not a prescription, but we want to try to find a way to improve our work and our production and maybe help keep us a little sane here, not try to be a little chaotic, help us focus. So if email doesn't require an instantaneous response, why do we have it open all day long and looking at it all day? Most of it, I have two monitors. And I used to always have maybe email on one monitor and maybe my work on another that I'm working on and look back and forth. The problem with that is what I did, and I imagine a lot of you have done, is maybe I'm working on something and I get distracted by an email. What I would do, I would drop what I'm working on, look at the email, try to answer them or look up an answer for that person that's asking the email. So my production, my focus is kind of back and forth. I'm not being really very productive, I would say. Not really focused. Here it says I look at email and I get sucked into a rabbit hole, running all over different trails, from emails back to my work that I'm supposed to be working on. So we have to understand that my thinking is my train of thought is important enough that it doesn't need to be distracted. So this is a way that we can stay focused on one thing at a time. I know in the IT world, we'll try to do multitasking, but we do a better job, I think, if we can keep our train of thought on task. Oop, and I added my train of thought. The mindset we want to have is not to let, I said Outlook, which is email, not a, Outlook shouldn't control me. I want to control my email. I want to control Outlook. So We need to think of emails as not super critical things, but think of them as possible tasks. So when something comes in an email, I need to treat that as a task that I need to do something with, okay? Not something super critical, unless of course it is, but think of it just as another task. If it is super critical, then we can deal with that. Okay, so let's just jump into how we can stop doing this email rabbit hole, right? So the first thing that I have to do is think of a way that I can have email not as not as prominent, right? So how can I have email open but not as prominent? The first thing I do is go to those notifications, because every time we get an email in, by default, I think there might be chimes or notifications. So let's go. What I do, and let me just show you what I did and what was recommended by the Microsoft employee. And we go to File, and this is the Outlook app. And we're going to go down to Options. And then under the Mail, the email, when a new message arrives. To be honest, I can't remember what these defaults are. It said play a sound, show an envelope icon in the taskbar. I have turned all that off because I want to control when I look at my email. I don't want it saying, hey, look at me, because I want to be in the driver's seat. I want to look at it on my terms. And I will tell you that my turnaround time on email is 4 to 6 hours. And I'll tell you that I only spent 15 minutes each time I look at email. So I look at email the first thing in the morning, around noon time, and then right before I leave in the evening, away, to leave for the day. So I only spend about 45 minutes a day in email at the most. So most of the time, it's not a whole 15 minutes, depending on how many emails I get. Right now, I used to have it open all day, so I'm always on email. Maybe 6 to 8 hours. So cutting that down to 30 to 45 minutes is a big change. So first thing I do is disable all of these settings, okay? And then another thing, this is just on the application. You also will want to do that in the web interface because these settings don't take effect in the web. So if you go out to the Outlook web browser, which I happen to have it open here, up here at the gearbox up by your profile, there's your gearbox. You select that, which will take you into settings. And here it says open up all Outlook settings. So here I will go into the general, not the mail, which is a little confusing there. Under the general, there's a notification. So how you get notified on the web. Again, I disable everything except for these two because it says notify me when I receive a reminder. So if I have a calendared item, I want to get notified because if you know me, I'm forgetful and I don't want to miss a meeting. Okay. So play a sound, notify me, both notify and play a sound if I get a reminder, of course, about a meeting. Okay, so we have those settings there as well. So again, I'm not going to be on email all day. I'm going to schedule 15 minutes in the morning around noon and 15 minutes before I leave to do email triage. Now, the email triage that I do in those 2 minutes, in a 15-minute period, when I get an email in, I do one of three things. I have a 2-minute rule. If I can do it within 2 minutes, that email, then I do it right away. And 2 minutes for me would be a long time because I could usually kind of answer a question. Once I've answered that question, I delete the email. I don't keep it because if they still need my help, they'll email me back. So I don't keep things in my inbox. As you notice here, I do have this one. This is for training that I use. But so I either do it, another option, the 3Ds, do it, delegate it. So maybe I have an email and it's for somebody else. That would be ideal for me. I just forward it on, delete it. And the third option is what I would do is to delay it. So if I look at that and I assess that it's going to take longer than 2 minutes to do, let me see if I have, here's an email in here. Let's say that here's Mizzou Athletics. I get an email and I look at that and it's going to take longer than 2 minutes to do. What I would do first is I would respond to the person sending it to me and say, hey, I got your email and I'm going to work on it. And I look at my calendar. So I calendar this thing. I assign it a time on my calendar to do it. So what I would do is take this email, drag it to the calendar over here on the left. Looks like a calendar. That calendar will pop open, is on the other screen. I can set aside some time. Let's say it's just 30 minutes. I can open up my calendar and I can pick a time where I want to work on this. But I will set up aside some time to work on that, focus on that project, not multitask, and to give it my best work. So then I would say, okay, I'm going to save this, and it's going to be on my calendar. Let me go ahead and do this for tomorrow, 2:30. So then I would reply back, hey, I got, just so they know, I got your email. I see the, if there's any more questions with this, I would ask them then, but I have set up time tomorrow at 2:30 to work on this email. If I go to my calendar, tomorrow is here and it's at 2:30 here. Is this it? Yeah, come home. So here's the thing that I'm going to work on. Okay. Just not to confuse myself. I'm gonna delete that. So I either do it right away, I delegate it or delay it. I schedule a time to work on that. Okay. So that's how I deal with the emails. But in order to receive the emails, you notice I have what's called the zero inbox. I do have one message in that I chose to keep in there. What I have done, I have set up at least 3 subfolders. One's called noise, one is called follow-up, and one is called waiting on something. So I have set up a rule that anything that is not addressed directly to me. So if I'm a part of a group, like a listserv, or if there's a bunch of people, like this went out to all the IT staff. Because it went to a group, it came into my noise. So the important things that are addressed to me will come right into my inbox. And I'll show you how to set this up. So all other emails, I do have other filters that automatically go, like if you're in distribution list, it might go into other folders. But anything that makes it through all my rules, anything left over will come into noise, except where I am in the to field or the carbon copy field, and I'll show you that. Once it's in noise, I'll look at the email, and maybe it's something that we're waiting on somebody to reply. In that case, I will let them know, I'll send it on, and then I'll drag it onto waiting on something. Okay, so here's something. This is a training that I'm doing in May. So I want to make sure to have that information available quickly. I drug it down, mainly drug it from noise to waiting on something. And it might have been in my inbox because it is, I'm in the to field. So that would have been in my inbox. Follow-up is if somebody had a question, I send it back to them, and don't want to lose that. Typically I delete it, but if it's something that we're corresponding with, I will put it in follow-up. Now you will notice by default, Outlook will put your unread message count here. What I have done with these 2 folders, I've changed it from unread messages to the number of items in those folders. So this has a 2 here. This has an 8 because that's how many messages I have in there. So what I've done there, I'll just pick on this waiting on something. If I right click on that and go to properties, instead of showing the number of unread messages, I said show total number of items. So I've selected that. So it shows me how many emails that I have in there because I do want to keep track of those. Okay. What I have done on the rule, and let's just look at rules. If I go up here, and I can go up here to file and go to manage rules. And here's rules here, and I can say manage rules. Let me just go to manage rules. So here are all the rules I have. Here's my DoIT services 365. The very last rule that you'll want Sorry about that. The very last rule, and once you create a rule here, you can move it up and down your list. You want this noise rule. I call it noise because that's where all my email is going. I put my noise rule at the bottom, and you want to make sure that none of these other rules here have this at the end where it says stop processing more rules. You want all your rules, all your emails that don't hit one of these to get down to this one and then stop processing more rules. If I had that rule here about stop processing more rules, it would not hit the end of these. So make sure you have this here. Okay. So the way I created this rule, let's just go ahead and create a new rule, and I'll show you what I did. I hit new rule, and I say apply rule on messages I receive. So every email that I receive, I'll hit next. Which conditions do you want to check? Every condition, no matter what the email is. So I'm going to hit that. You said this rule will reply to every message you receive. Is this correct? Yes. So what I want to do, I created this folder again called noise. I want to move every email to that folder. So I'm going to say move email to the specified folder is noise under my inbox, noise. Hit next. And then it says, are there any exceptions? Yes. I want to move every piece of mail except where my name, explicitly, my name is in the, here it said to box, but I want to say in the to box or the carbon copy box. So now the only email that will be in the root of my inbox are ones that are addressed specifically to me in the to or the CC box. Then I'll hit next. And then you can name your rule, and I can turn that on, and I can also run it now for every message that's in the inbox. So it's nice if you already have a lot of messages in there. I did this, and all my messages that weren't addressed to me or in the to or the carbon copy went into noise and then left that in there. And then I just went through the noise box. I'm not going to do that. Cancel. It will add stop processing more rules here, and then you're done. So, and then you also, of course, want to check and make sure that rule is also out here just by going to rules and manage your rules. And here's all my rules here, and make sure it's toggled on and make sure they're in the right order here. A couple of things that's really important. I mentioned earlier that a lot of us used to be on listservs. So you need to decide, of course, if you're on a listserv, like here's some listservs here or whatever that I'm on. Do you want to, make it, if you need to stay on a listserv, make a separate folder, of course, for that listserv. But you also need to decide, do you need to still be on those listservs? And more importantly, I think, is all these subscriptions that a lot of us sometimes we go to these conferences or somehow we get on these subscriptions. Make sure to unsubscribe from any useless subscriptions. Be careful when you unsubscribe from things because it says, click here to unsubscribe, and sometimes you get on something you don't want to be on. But just when possible, unsubscribe from those or make them as a junk sender so they get blocked. It took a while for me it probably took, I would say, 6 weeks to kind of get all those things off of my inbox. So right away, don't expect those to just disappear, okay? Before I go back to the slides, Lisa, do you have questions or anything that you can think of?
Not yet.
Okay, so let me just go back to the PowerPoint and kind of give a summary here. Oops. So to help get you started, kind of as a reminder, the zero inbox, think of email as tasks that are coming in, right? If we can start thinking things as tasks and then schedule your tasks according to your workday, of your availability, so you control your own task. Use technology to limit technology. Use it in a good way. Don't let it interrupt your train of thought. Again, unsubscribe from useless subscriptions. Do you still need to be on some of those distribution lists? I tell people, if you need to get a hold of me, even regardless of whatever distribution list, sometimes they don't pertain to you. They might pertain to others or just in general. If it's something that's I need to know or have a question about, reach out to me directly. And most of the time I tell people to reach out in Teams chat. I do better at that right now. Make sure you configure your Outlook apps, both the desktop and the web. Only open your email at designated times. This is a big thing because when I first switched over, I still had my emails open. It takes a little while to get used to this because we have a tendency to kind of go back to the way we always used to doing things. But commit to this. Commit to whatever works in your environment. 2 to 3 times a day, 15 minutes each, and you'll find you have a lot more time. Now, at first, you'll probably maybe take 15 to 30 minutes, depends on how many subscriptions and distribution lists that, as you start filtering them out. Once you have all those cleaned up, 15 minutes, mine's about 10 minutes. I'm not on email very often. Remember the 2-minute rule. Do it right away if you can. If delegate to somebody else if that's appropriate, or delay it. And again, if you delay it, reply back so the person knows that you got their email and you will be working on it. They appreciate that. I do tell people I give them a 4 to 6 hour replies because they know that I'm not on my email. So you let the people know that you'll maybe I don't know if maybe I need to put that in my signature, but give them a time frame when to expect, because if they see me an email in the morning right after I close it, then they won't hear back from me till noon. So, but I do try to stick to those times, 8, 12, and 3:30 or whatever time that is. And then set up the appropriate folders to free up your inbox at the root of the inbox. Keep that cleaned up. I keep my noise cleaned up and try to keep these clean. I try to put them in the appropriate folders. Use rules to folders as needed, whether it, you're being your distribution list. But if you can use rules to keep things flowing, so you don't have to manually do it. Then the one thing that I haven't done yet, what they recommend is delete the email app from your phone. So what that means is commit to these designated times. You might be like, well, I'll be on vacation. What if I'm out of town? Then you shouldn't be. They're saying if you're not working, then don't be working. You have to have a rule set up that says, hey, I'm out of town. I'll get back to your email when I get back. So use only at your computer. If you have a family, I know my spouse, of course, would be happier about this, because on my phone, I did turn off the notification for my emails and stuff. So at least do that, but maybe you'll get to that level, or maybe I'll get to that level. And I'll just read this. Here's a link to it. This is from Microsoft. It says inbox 6 tips for living outside the box. It says, while these strategies alone are unlikely to completely empty your folders, that's not really the goal. The most important outcome is the ability to quickly and confidently manage your messages, lower your stress levels, and help you live outside the box, right? Because we want to control and be better stewards of our work, keep our employer happy, to keep ourselves happy, the family, people that are important to us. So, but these are just kind of guidelines. If you're in an environment that you don't have to monitor, if it's not your job to monitor all 8 hours of the day, if it's not an urgent message, if you can treat them like tasks, then this is a way that you can treat your emails as a task. Lisa, can you think of any questions that people might have?
Well, perhaps, and I feel that you may have answered this already, but I wanted to bring this point up. Okay, so in the environment that I came from, looking at my email constantly was important. There were a lot of tasks, so to speak, that would come in, a request, even though emails were supposed to go to a different environment. A lot of people send them directly to me,
Right.
which there was an overwhelming amount of email, and tasks had to be made from it. So in an environment like that, it's hard for me to fathom only looking at it 3 times a day.
Right.
Is there a way that you could utilize a to-do list? Now, I saw the follow-up and I saw, can you bring up your inbox again,
Yeah.
if you would? I want to see the folders.
Yeah. I will mention if there is an avenue that people should be using, I would imagine the reason that they're using people like you that gave them quick response is because of that, because you were given quick response. So if we could
Agreed.
direct people to use the avenue that they should be using and not
Yes,
take advantage of better service, I understand, which is good. But
I agree. Yes, I agree. All right, so let's say you do get an email and you do need to follow up with it, but not necessarily put it on a calendar per se, because you have a list of several to-do tasks. How do you utilize to-do in an email environment? Is that a different scenario topic to incorporate the two together, or
yeah,
is it, what can you expand on that?
yeah. On the if I'm working for somebody else, I will either put it on my calendar, set aside time just to do for that. So I don't use task or to do in this instance. I only use a calendared item. But if it's what I'm saying, it's a one-time focus that I need to get done. But if it's an ongoing, like a mini project that I'm going to be working with the person, then I'll probably put it under, like you're saying, to do or a task. I'll create a task. We'll work together because it's not like a one-time. I can do it, and here's your solution.
Okay.
So, does that make sense?
Yes, it does. If I had to compare it to hard copy mail, like letters that you would get,
Yeah.
I usually only look at that stuff once a week. And I touch it once and then I burn through it and move on. And in this electronic environment, you're more or less referring to it in the same way. You're scheduling time to touch it once or move it to a time when you can devote more attention to it and, deal with it once and move on.
Yeah.
So I can appreciate that. It's definitely a mindset to change your way of thinking.
It is.
Sure.
And what you brought up, that is a good illustration. We go from mail, like you're saying, to now email. It's just electronic mail. And we just got accustomed to me, it's like when I walk into a bank, I'll just use a bank. They go to phone call and they kind of forget about me, or, I just say a bank, but they kind of forget about you and they're working on somebody on the phone. So it's kind of disrupting their work, their focus. That's what happens, I think, a lot with email, leaving it open and all of a sudden they get an email and they kind of forget, plus lose their train of thought. But like you said, if people, it's a different mindset. You focus, if you can think of this as a task oriented, that you either schedule time, but if it's a long-term kind of a mini project, then yeah, and that's one thing I did not show. You can, and what Lisa's referring to here, let me show my screen again. Let's say that I get an email. I have an email here, and this is something that I don't want to schedule, but I want to work with those people. I want to make a long-term task with it. I can easily take this and drag it to this little tablet with the check mark. That will pop up and I can make this into a task and I can add more information there. And then it becomes a task, for me. And I can put more, like I said, put more information. Once you've made it a task, I can see all my tasks here. And these are tasks that that I'm working, coming from teams and everything. But then I can assign a date that I can work on. I mean, to work with that person. If we have a project that's due the end of May, then it's more of a long-term task, not a one-time task. So yeah, these are more long-term tasks. But that's an easy way, again, to do that. If it's in my inbox, I can take it in. If I don't drag it to the calendar, if it's a one-time, I can drag it to the calendar, or a long-term, then we can drag it to task and actually make a task or kind of a mini project. But I'm glad you mentioned that, because that is something that we'll need to mention.
Yes. I think in this day and age, we're so used to being turned on all the time between social media, inbox, whatever, that we have to learn to schedule our time appropriately. And it's definitely a mindset to make that change.
Yeah. 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 Like you said, if we can just learn how to control the different things that we work on, just put it into a box, or just focus on that one item, that one task at hand, right? If you could look at everything you work on as a task and kind of get back to that. I know sometimes we like to multitask. That's why I call it multitask. You don't get as quality as work when you start multitasking.